Welcome to the Sunspice podcast. For those of you who have never seen this, which you haven't because this is our first one. This is where I get to hear phenomenal stories of people from all different walks of life, and specifically talk and kind of get in depth on some of their adversities and how they have dealt with them, overcome them, and hopefully just totally demolished and conquered them. In your case, I think that's what it is, which is good.
Yeah.
So here with me today is Melanie Trygg. I'm calling you the Runway fashion designer turned Yogi.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you want to be called, but that's kind of what came to my it's what came to my mind.
Yep.
What a fascinating story.
Yep.
So you literally just got done with your yoga class. And
yes. Yep. Just taught this morning. It wasn't too sweaty this morning.
Oh, okay. So, I was going to say you look gorgeous
Thank
for
you.
having just sweated out, but
it's the yoga glow.
The yoga glow. Yes. I do know the yoga glow.
Yep.
Although I have to be honest, I was really, I've been doing yoga for years, but I've kind of gotten lazy. So we'll have to talk after about maybe you helping me kick my butt back into gear on
Absolutely.
that. I can tell. I always can tell if I haven't been doing yoga, if my hips are starting to be tight.
Yep.
Because that seems to be like that number one spot, like hips and neck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I need
neck
to
and shoulders for me. Yeah.
Neck and shoulders. Yeah. Which is funny because that's all about expression, right? The neck and the shoulders and the ears, this whole area, the throat chakra, which is where you're like, oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always am like blocked up there. Mm-hmm. It's like trauma.
I'm scared. I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, what was that like when so you were on Project Runway in 2018? Was that the last season or this last?
It was season 18, but we shot it in 2019.
2019.
Yeah, summer of 2019. So last summer.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I couldn't watch the show. I was like YouTubing trying to find you on the shows, but I did find this awesome new segment that you did.
Oh, good.
And
good.
you had the fashion runway models walking out, showing your stuff. It was really cool to watch. Was it challenging for you to be on camera, or in the beginning, is it something you were comfortable with? Like, what was that sort of process like for you?
Yeah, it was really surreal because I've done a fair amount of work behind the camera. I've done a fair amount of production work. Okay. So then being the talent, like I'm used to the work of being a fashion designer and I'm used to doing runway presentations and to an extent used to speaking in front of people about my work. But it was just a little bit surreal being the focus and not having the control of the production side. I was the subject more. So,
was there, so I've had very little experience, but I've had a little bit of experience with, the reality scene. And I felt I remember there was one like sort of show, it was a pilot that was being filmed, and I felt like I was being manipulated into feeling certain ways. There was this sort of like, they were really good at trying to get me to react and respond in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if on Project Runway, if it was a similar experience. You almost feel like they're pushing you into a corner to try to pull out whatever it is they want you to say.
I can't speak to, because of an NDA, I can't speak to that side of it, but I can say that, that they capture so much.
Yeah.
So we're in such a range of emotions. For me, the range of emotions was so much more personal than the work that was being put in front of me.
Yeah.
So it was challenging to feel like I was coming off as flustered or incapable because of the conditions I was in emotionally, you know? Mm-hmm. So, and it was triggered by the experience. So it's real.
Your environment is so intense.
Yeah. But it was
maybe even more intense than it necessarily needed to be.
I think, I think
we can leave it at that.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, it was cool to see that when you're really committed to creative work, the hurdles, as in anything, are in your brain.
Yeah.
It's not the work. You can do the work physically. It's those blockages mental. Inside. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That get you off.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack a little bit just so our audience can get an idea of really like where you started. Yeah. So you grew up in Seattle.
Yeah, I grew up, I was born in Ballard and then we moved to Bainbridge when I was about 6. So for most of my young life on Bainbridge
And then when high school hit, The only so I read your bio. It's like, it was wonderful. I really enjoyed reading it. It was like 1 a.m. in the morning, and I was falling asleep, and then I got this email, and I literally, it was like a book where I like started reading it, and I was like, I'll just probably read the rest later. And I'm like, nope, keep reading. I can't. I'm like, I have to finish this because it's so good. It was really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed learning a little bit about you. And thank you for being so vulnerable. That's very powerful. It's powerful to be open. But I did giggle when you talked about Britney Spears doing 1,000 crunches and you reading that in a magazine and that being like your experience. You're like, oh, that's how I look like that supermodel, or that hot body that I always want to have. And I totally related to that. One, because I idolized Britney Spears.
Who didn't?
And
really?
I think I started idolizing her when I was like 6 years old. It was something ridiculous. I mean, I think you have a couple of years on me, but not many, and it probably got you right at that sort of like teenhood where that is so, it's so intense at that time. So then to have that type of pressure.
Yeah.
And those sort of idols. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think looking back on it, I'm really hopeful for where we're at now in society. And I think there's so much more body positivity in youth culture now.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, it just wasn't even a question.
Yeah.
In the 90s, early 2000s, it was just like, oh no, you're supposed to look like that.
Yeah.
That's what's right.
Yeah.
So looking back, it's like, oh my God, that was effective brainwash.
Really effective.
Really effective brainwash.
One of the many ways we like to brainwash society. So after high school, you went to Rhode Island. And what was the fashion?
It's called
Institute?
Rhode Island School of Design.
Okay.
Yep. RISD is what it's called.
RISD.
Yeah.
And you didn't last long there. It wasn't.
I would have loved to finish. It was just super expensive. It was, it was like close to $60,000 a year. And just, too much. But the experience, even that first year was I tap into it anytime I'm in a creative setting. It's being around that large of a group of people that are trying to be creative day in and day out is, you never get that again in life.
Yeah.
So it's traveled with me for sure, though I do wish I could have finished. So
yeah. Well, and I found it interesting, this sort of like, as you were talking about your story growing up, because you're in fashion, right? So you're in this very like prestigious, intense, judgy, just, I don't know what that word you would put on it.
There's a lot of status.
That would be the word. So high status. And then at the same time, which you liked, right? You to a certain degree, you like that because it's just, it's a part of the artistry. And you spoke to fashion as like this wonderful artistry. While at the same time as you're looking at these magazines of these toothpicks, it was really, you look back and you're almost probably disgusted or like, you're like, why did I, to a certain extent.
Yeah. It was like I was trying to find my foothold into it. I think I was entranced by the creativity and artistry of the fashion design that I would see. Like it was exciting to me, but because it was paired with that image of stick thin models. Yeah. Really, I'm unwrapping that still as I come into my own, like, what was the hook? Was it that I wanted my body to look that way or that I loved the artistry of the design work? Right. So it's
my gut would be you love the artistry, but because your first sort of experience with this artistry was in this sort of image, with this figure, then I would assume. I feel like in some of your recent designs, though, I don't get a feeling that you're tailoring your fashion to that, which is wonderful.
And I'm not. I think when I first started, it was very much like, okay, how can I get thin models for my runway shows? Really, it was like, oh, how do I match that
you just want to do what everyone else is doing that you've seen be successful.
Yep. Yeah. But more and more, my custom work through the years has been not for size zeros. Those aren't the people that are commissioning custom work. Yeah. So it's been a progression through my creative work has been just getting more real with people's bodies and making that beautiful and amplifying that natural beauty. So yeah.
So you after Project Runway and you made it, how many episodes did you go or sessions? I'm not sure how
I think it was 5 and then I got to come back for a 6th episode with my friend Jeffrey who ended up winning. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then did you find your yoga practice after or before or sort of?
I had been practicing since about 2014. I started practicing yoga. So I'd had, a good number of years under my belt personally practicing.
Yeah.
And then I taught a class to the other contestants while I was there.
Oh, cool.
And then Christian Siriano, the mentor, did this interview with me afterwards, and he was asking me about my yoga work too. And it just was like, okay, that's where I'm headed.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I love fashion. I always will. It's just, and it'll be there whenever I can come back to it.
Yeah.
But I think I need a different direction.
Well, and it would be,
I
think it would be interesting to see how like your yoga, your more spiritual side of who you are is evolving and then maybe coming back to it.
Yep.
With me in nutrition, I was working in nutrition, not for myself. I was working for all these big companies. And then I left it and I did something totally different. And now I'm just coming back to it, So I think it's funny how we kind of, I feel like we're guided to a certain extent, and everything kind of will show itself. I feel like it's, it's still part of your, part of your story.
Absolutely.
That maybe it's the chapter isn't closed. The book isn't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you're really right. And I've always had that kind of, not a back burner as in I'm bailing on it, just like, it's always back there. I'm always soaking in creative and inspiring stuff that I see in the world. Like I'm always noticing things that I like visually.
Yeah.
And it'll be able to be expressed at some point. So yeah.
I do want to talk further about kind of yoga and diving into that.
Yeah.
But I think I feel like, or I'm intuiting that maybe your sort of movement and your own awakening into that part of your life had something to do with more darker things that happened prior.
Yep.
And you hint at it in your biography when I was reading it. So I guess maybe we can start with college.
Yes. Yeah.
You were getting ready to go to LA. You had plans to go to LA and you found somebody and you said 10 years older than you.
Yep.
And mine was 20, so it's okay.
It happens.
I found the 20-year-old man who I thought would be so mature. It turned out he was actually
surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah. I think I want to start by saying that yoga has helped me give space to people that have hurt me. And appreciate the fact that I probably wasn't perfect either in those circumstances. But working towards using the personal hurt towards empowerment as someone that's past it now. But yeah, I mean, I think that men and whatever the kind of relationship women, however you identify, there's hurt that you put on other people that you don't even realize you're applying. So until you hear it back to you, how are you going to change and how are you going to know how to behave differently?
Yeah.
So I couldn't say it back in the moment, but now I can say it. So that feels like progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm trying to string along, and maybe I need to have a bit of a background about you and your family life before I ask these deeper questions.
Yeah, sure.
Because often our childhood impacts us way more dramatically than we know. Did you come from a stable family unit? Were your parents together? Was your relationship with your father really close, and your mother? I mean, what did that look like? So
I was the youngest. I was the third of three daughters. And I was definitely looking for attention most of my life. My dad worked full-time forever and so he worked really hard and busy. Was really committed, but just working to support us.
The provider and less of the emotional pieces.
And throughout to this day, he has always kind of gotten me more than my mom had traditionally. He just, when I wanted to go off to a concert in Seattle, he wanted me to go see that. There wasn't as much fear, I think, on his side for me. My mom had more fear for me that I was kind of stepping into things that weren't good for me. Do you think your dad was aware of it, or do you think he just had a less hands-on, maybe less? I think I think he had just had such a tumultuous, for lack of better words, young adulthood that he wasn't like worried about me. Like I was savvy enough that I wasn't.
You won't be doing anything
kind of
that I haven't already done.
Yeah. And like just we lived in a safe community, and I was friends with good kids that had good parents, and I just, we were pushing our boundaries, but in a safe, pretty controlled, safe way. Looking back,
totally.
So I think my upbringing, being the youngest, definitely made me feel like I had something to prove, kind of from the get-go. Oh, well, I can do what you can do. Yeah, and I can do my own thing.
I see that with my 3-year-old all the time. All the time. He's right now we're in the phase of trying to tell daddy that he's, that like he can do something better than, or he's stronger, taller. And I'm like, all like 2 feet of you have a long ways to go, buddy. Slow your roll.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in terms of like that family dynamic, I think I just knew that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be different, and I wanted to be good at it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, having, being so easily kind of, I don't like to use the word brainwashed on the show, but what would you, persuaded and impacted by the magazines and the fashion world and stuff, from you on a personal note, when you found yourself in a less than optimal place, I mean, I read that you resorted to some pretty intense sort of self-medicating practices that weren't necessarily effective. Right. And I have to be totally honest that I don't have that experience. That wasn't, I have my own bag of traumas, but, food issues and disorders were not something that I had. I had insecurities around it. I have stuff around, I think my stomach was always my sort of like place that I felt like it was gross and not good enough and not pretty enough, and probably has something to do with Britney Spears' abs that I saw on the MTV music video when she was holding that snake, and I was like, holy crap, I want those. But for you, it really impacted you.
Yeah. I think where my awareness around my body came from, I mean, it was definitely from magazines. It was from pop culture at that time. And then in my last couple of years of high school, I started having aversions to food, or just noticing aversions to food, dairy and gluten specifically. Yeah. And my mom was on kind of a personal healing path too. She just never, she oftentimes just didn't feel well through her motherhood. I mean, she just would not feel great. And so she was trying to figure out if food was the source of her discomfort. Right. And so I was kind of following that path with her, and tried going gluten and dairy free, and it worked great. But I do think that in a time in my life where things were really uncertain, and I was going into school and then couldn't finish school and moving to a new city, food became this kind of like, oh, well, I can control this. Yeah. I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. I can't have that, and that. I can do this, and I can exercise, and I can control my body and what I put into it.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you want to own that. You want to take responsibility for it. Yep. But for you, it became almost an obsession.
It was, I think it was really, I didn't have this insight at the time, obviously, but looking back, it was something I could control. It was a standard in my life, something I knew, okay, I can have this many calories. And also, I mean, really, like, calorie counting was something that was in magazines for young people. Like, that's not any way for a young person to live. But yeah, I mean, it was a constant. So I could rely on it. And then the result of having such a restrictive diet was losing a bunch of weight and being really skinny. Yeah. Which in my head was, as a young person, was like desirable, but so disordered. Like, you can't just exercise 4 hours a day as a 20-year-old starving artist. Like, that's just not, it's not going to work out. Yeah. So
did you have any intense health issues that came with it?
Not yet. I was lucky. I mean, I think that I could have done a lot of damage if I
What
wouldn't
was
have
the
stopped when I
time
did.
period where you were, I mean, bulimic would be what you...
Yeah, I think when I went to school, to give kind of a timeline to it, so I had my senior year of high school, I had gone gluten-free and dairy-free. And then going into school, there was a dining hall, and so limited food options. And so I lost a bunch of weight because I was eating vegetables and turkey and hard-boiled eggs and fruit. Like there was no gluten-free, dairy-free fat really option. So so that just was a natural byproduct. And then just exercising and exercising and exercising as a way to fill time. Yeah, it was like, I think kind of exercise bulimia to an extent, like working off all of the calories that minimal calories that I'd consumed. And then, and then it just kind of reversed when I got back home, because then I had access to all of these foods that I could eat. So yeah, it was just, I never felt like, oh, I have an eating disorder. Really, to this day, I'm not like, oh, I had a serious eating disorder. But then I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, that was my coping mechanism, and that was not good for my body.
Yeah.
So going from being really skinny without really trying that hard to do it, it just became this like, oh, I work out and I only eat vegetables and fruit and meat. And a year later, I'm super thin and now have all these gluten-free, dairy-free options that I can eat. So now I'm taking in this food that I haven't been used to, putting weight back on and feeling like, what is going on with my body? How do I control this again? How do I get back to control of this?
And that was the beginning
when, the bulimia started. Yeah. So
how long did that last?
So I moved to LA in 2009.
From Rhode Island or from Seattle?
I come back home for the summer.
And then you got it.
And then moved to LA, and it was probably about
And you had
6
had a
months
boyfriend who was in the industry. Was he a producer?
He was a creative director.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not so great to you.
He was
reminding you when your thighs got a little thick.
Yeah. I think that he showed me what that world could be like. And I was so like, oh, I could do that. That could be my whole life. Like I was so ready for someone to just guide me into this world that I'd fawned off for so long, that I overlooked the ins and outs of the actual relationship.
Yeah.
And you know, I think about if my husband saw me working out that much and eating so little now, he would say something.
Yeah.
You know,
you
need people in your life that are going to check on you in that regard.
Yeah. So then at what point between the time that you healed past that, or mostly, did you find yoga, or did you find it kind of
in the healing process? Yeah. So it'd been, I guess, 3 or so years that I was kind of in the throes of an eating disorder, and really, again, the whole time not even calling it that in my own head. And then I met my husband, and he was the first person that I really told about it that wasn't disappointed in me. Like he wasn't like watching me to an extent. Like he wasn't trying to fix it for me. He just would listen and would support me when I was feeling low. So that helped a lot. Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
really
really important.
was the first step.
Did your mom, were your parents aware of this? Did you share with them after the fact? I mean,
they were aware. They could see how much my body had changed and were wanting me to not work out as much and wanting me to eat more, but had never called it that. And I'd never called it that to them either. Yeah. I still, towards the end of my mom's life, I wanted to tell her that had gone on, but it was more for me. I felt like once I really thought about it. And I didn't want to even put that, like make her feel guilty for any of that either. I never had told my mom about it. My sisters and closest friends know about it, but yeah, I think it's a piece of the way I coped through challenge that I hope other people will not go to. A phone call to a friend is much better for your body than binging on unhealthy food and throwing it up to feel control.
When you were in that place, what did you need that you didn't either reach out to or that someone else that loved you didn't? What did you actually need? Maybe it was what your husband gave you.
I mean, I do think it was. I grew up in such a tight-knit community and had really, really close friends through my high school years. And we just called each other on stuff.
Yeah.
And that accountability was just swept out from under me.
Right. Not having that tribe of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Being 19, basically on my own in a city I'd never lived in before. I just didn't have a soft place to fall.
Yeah.
So I think it was really like us scrambling for security in some way.
Right.
And I was trying to prove that I could do it so hard that I didn't want to reach out to people that knew me really well.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to prove to them that they were right, that I shouldn't have done this.
Yes. Yeah. I hear that. So as you found yoga, what was the thing about it that made you want to actually become a teacher, feeling this calling as to what you were supposed to be doing with this practice?
Yeah. I mean, the first class I took from my teacher, really, I was crying in Shavasana. She was talking about finding a place to call home in our physical body. And
where were you when you were taking this class?
In Seattle, a studio called Shefa Yoga. Leah is my teacher, and I love you so much, Leah.
Ooh, thank you, Leah. Look at this beautiful, beautiful product.
Yeah,
class.
She's helped so many people, and in ways that I'm sure she doesn't even know. It's just having someone, especially for me, a woman, offer me that kind of intention of, you're fine. Your body is a home for you. I mean, it gives me chills still thinking about it. I was so in a mindset of fix your body, get it better, get it thinner, get it more.
I'm going to cry thinking about this right now. Yeah. Cause it's like we're told so much, or we feel so much that we start out in this place of there's something wrong and not everything is good. Like, everything is good starting from that place. So somehow you have to, it's like this retraining. I feel like, at least, I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I know for me, it's been, I'm in that process right now of retraining my brain that like, your body is good. You are healthy, and just that simple switch of language and switch of emotion, which, the first 50 times I said that, I didn't believe it. I mean, it took so long.
And there's days I don't. I mean, there's definitely days I don't. Yeah. But the big story, the headline is that it's fine. My body is fine.
You're fine.
Carrying me. Yeah. Not to simplify it, but I think that being in a setting, being in that kind of active setting, like the gym has also been a control thing for me throughout my young adulthood of like, okay, well, I'll just go sweat it out. I'll just go work it out and I'll feel better about my body.
Yeah. And you probably did. I mean, it's complicated because after you work out, you do feel great. You've released all these endorphins, you've replenished your blood, you've got oxygen flowing. So you do feel good. But how high do you want to ride that wave and for how long?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think going into a setting, I think it was my first yoga class really. And it was a heated class. So being in that setting of like, oh, we're here to sweat, but then also being told you're already there. You just need to realize that you're already there. You're already home in your body. Like this is a safe place for you. Really, it changed the way I thought about exercise. I mean, I remember even after meeting my husband, there was still that kind of shadow of guilt about my body image and feeling bad in the day, like feeling guilty until I went to the gym, or like shaming myself until I had gone to the gym, and acting not nice to people around me until I had gone to the gym, which is just like, I hate that I was that way.
Yeah.
I've forgiven
myself as you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, God, I literally I do that still, Like I become like this evil, little monster if I don't get to the gym, almost every other day. Like I can tell if I hit day 3 and I haven't gone to the gym, I'm like really bratty, like don't want to be around me. And Ryan's like, go take care of yourself.
But shifting that language around it.
Yeah.
Of it's I'm serving my body. I'm strengthening my body because I want to feel stronger, not because I think I need to fix it to be this certain way. Yeah. So yeah.
Yes.
So once I felt that, I just was hooked on the practice of yoga. And then it was about 2 years of practicing, 2 or 3 years until I took my first teacher training.
Nice.
And inside of that teacher training, we really dove a lot deeper into what we even want to offer as a teacher, how our life story has influenced what we have to offer to others.
Yeah.
And there were moments inside of that where I just felt like I had been so transformed by the practice that if I could spark any sort of that in students, that would be a dream for me. So
I guess for you, I mean, just like a quick sort of, if you can do a one-liner, like what is this practice as a teacher? What is your mission? Your mission statement, so to speak. Yeah.
Let me think on it for just a second. I think, So my mission as an instructor, my calling as an instructor is to facilitate a space for people to feel at home in their own bodies. That's our home. That's where
amazing.
That's our soul home.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really hard. Most people don't. And that's like the just sad sort of dark truth about it. We're like, and I mean, I think Americans are really good at doing this because we're like consumers of the external world so much. Give me more of the things and the this and this so that we can feel complete versus, I mean, and I'm at fault from it almost every day, in these tiny little ways. So I mean, I think it's the beginnings of this sort of respecting of how we're perceiving the world and ourselves and how we operate within the world and within ourselves, where the first thing you do is you look within, and then second you can look out. But before you're inside and you're really tuned in there, don't even think about looking out.
Yep. And emotional response can snap you out of that path real quick.
Oh yeah.
But I think there is kind of, when it comes to our bodies aging and our bodies changing over time and our own mortality, I think that there's plenty of ways to distract ourselves out of our physical body. There's our phones, there's social contact, there's alcohol, there's food, there's exercise, there's all these ways that we can distract ourselves and convince ourselves that we're just this form that can be improved and improved and improved and improved until it's perfect, which we're constantly breaking down. We're constantly aging. And can we get comfortable in that and still function and not be mad that we haven't worked out in 3 days? Like that's kind of the shift that I hope I can stay with.
Yeah. Because when you think about it, the amount of energy that you spend hating yourself because you didn't work out for 3 days, right? I think about that, the feelings, and we all know this sort of like, okay, so you have this sort of thought, this negative thought, and that creates a feeling. And if it's a feeling of stress or frustration or anger, it's like, okay, well then you're gonna create some sort of cortisol within your body.
Yep.
And then that's going to, so you have this stress response already happening in your body. So the thoughts around the fact that you didn't work out for 3 days are arguably way worse for your body than the fact that you didn't work out for 3 days.
Yep. And those around you that are then dealing with an upset person. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of for myself, what would that statement be? What would I say to myself as this sort of reframing when I haven't worked out for 3 days? Maybe I haven't worked out for a week. Maybe I was sick, or maybe I just wasn't feeling good. It's like, what do I tell myself? It's okay. You needed to take a rest for 3 days. or you needed to reset.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think,
what do you tell yourself?
I think that for me, I've finally gotten in the groove, the regularity, the habit of being in my physical body and moving in a way that works for my physical body.
Yeah.
That I'm functioning again, that like my metabolism is working again. For years, it was just very thrown off from disordered eating.
Yeah.
I wasn't processing food. I wasn't getting energy from food.
Yeah.
So I think just trusting that you haven't given up on exercising. You're not going to go to the gym again in the future.
Yeah.
This is just a week where you were full with other things.
Yeah.
You know, and your body is going to be there for you when you are back in the gym.
Yeah. And it will tell you, you know, it does speak to you. You know, I think part of it is if you are hyper aware of your body, like for me, my issue is actually that I become so hyper aware of my body that I overthink. I mean, I know you can relate to this too. It's like this overthinking of like, I didn't do this. I ate that. I shouldn't have eaten that. I didn't drink enough water. Go drink a bunch of water. Okay. I feel like crap right now. Okay, well, I'll have a glass of wine and it's fine. Well, I'll have 2 glasses of wine and it's fine. And okay, now I have to drink a bunch of water. And there's just like constant calculations in my head.
Yep.
And, you know, and I know, but it's funny because if I just sit down and I could do like a 5-minute meditation to calm my whole body down, and I feel like $1 million, you know? And that's all it takes for all of this sort of build up.
Yep.
You know?
Well, it has to go somewhere, you know, that cortisol, that stress, it doesn't just
disappear. It has to come out in some way.
It has to be seen or released in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Working with, and we'll probably have to wrap up pretty soon, but I'm excited to be doing a goddess series where we start tapping into the chakra system and goddesses, because it is really, you know, I think it's a great sort of, the Hindu goddesses in particular, they give an imagery of these sort of characteristics that will come out, you know, and you think of that, the personality, you know, the bratty bitch, right?
Right.
Just like freaking out and she's so angry and she's so upset, which we all, as a woman, we all tune into. And it really, that's excess energy that wasn't harnessed. It wasn't properly utilized, and therefore it's stagnant and it has to come out some way.
Yep.
You know, and I think viewing our bodies as more of these energy forces potentially, and not just like the calories I eat, I need to burn off, which, you know, is the beginning steps, you know, to understanding your body, but it's maybe the wrong steps to take.
Yeah. And I think that one of the most important steps really is that just zoom out of, I'm not an unhealthy person. I'm a living, breathing person that needs things, that has commitments in my life. So big picture, what am I doing? That for me, yoga gave me that perspective for sure, to just quit calculating every minute and every calorie and every calorie burned. It's like, it's exhausting.
Well, and it creates a sort of energy where you're just like so high up, you know, you're just like overthinking everything and not rooted down.
Yep.
As an individual.
Who you actually are.
And feeling rooted is just, I feel safe and secure in my body and with my spirit, who I am, you know, and everything else that entails, you know, which we could then get into the conversation around the health of the lower colon and fertility issues and this sort of stressful environment as women that we do, and the impacts on our fertility with that, which would be fun to talk about. And I'm sure you have some.
Yeah.
As a mother.
Yes.
With a child is,
Yeah. I think,
I brought you a gift.
Thank you.
I had to give this one to you. I don't know. I always try to think of, okay, if I'm going to give someone a product on the show, what would it be? And I have to sit because we have the whole chakra line.
Yes.
So I basically, before I even see you, I have to like think about you and what it is that I would pick for you.
Yes.
So I chose root. So it's funny, we're talking about rooting down.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I got you a little bag of root to continue to stay rooted.
Love that.
In your body. And
can't wait to consume it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so great.
Yeah.
I think that's to kind of tie in all these pieces that I've shared so far. that's it. The foundation we come from so often can influence us, our families growing up, our family group growing up. It can set grounding and it can be beautiful, and it was for me. But then you can get used to that. And then when you lose it, there's a whole slew of ways that you try to cope.
Yeah.
And I think yoga can be that. There's so many different ways to ground and stay connected. But it's that. It's coming back to that sensation of groundedness, that home sense that you get so far away from.
That place that we all felt when we were in the womb, protected in our mom's bellies.
Yep. It's a real thing, and that we biologically want to get back to.
Well, but our traumas really do make for great stories, and they can make fabulous characters. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here today if you hadn't gone through these traumas and you've chosen to now transform them and build a magnificent life. And you're going to raise a wonderful son, and the principles that you're going to take from all of these, these issues and traumas and hurts and pains, will just carry on through your family and those that you teach around you. So
yeah.
Melanie, it's been really nice having you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching the Sunspice Wisdom Show, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.